So when you go through and you actually have your pattern, what you're going to do is you're going to open it up and you're going to find several things. The first thing you're going to find are these instructions, okay? And it's wonderful to have instructions because it's going to tell you what pieces you need to make each different doll dress, okay? And then later on, it's also going to show you the instructions, which we're going to go over on how to make each dress. Now today, I am using American Girl pattern by Simplicity. Thank you so much, Simplicity, for making these for us. This is pattern number 8192. And I find that Simplicity is really a great company. I also recommend McCall's, Butterwick, Vogue. I've done a couple of their dresses. But I decided to start doing some actual videos on how to, because people say, oh, well, Coach Leo, how do you do all these neat things? Well, I'm going to show you. I'm going to teach you how to do it. We got some cats playing in the background. When you have doll clothes, if you've never sewn before, I wouldn't recommend going with doll dresses. Number one, the pieces are way smaller. If you've never sewn before a day in your life, I would highly recommend that you do pajama pants. It's one of the best things that I actually enjoyed starting out with when I first started sewing, and I got really good at figuring out what you needed to do, and I made a lot of mistakes, and that's another thing. You can't be really too concerned about making mistakes because even the best seamstress, they make a lot of mistakes at first, and then they're gonna have to go through it and figure it out. But the thing about doll clothes is, you see how small these little patterns are? The one thing you have to focus in on, and I'll pull this up to the camera. Okay, so if you look at this, it's going to tell you everything you need to know. It's going to tell you how many that you need to cut and how many you need to put on there. All right, so you've got cut 2 on the folds. This is the fold. So when you see that, that means the fabric is folded in half. Now, thankfully for small patterns such as doll clothes, you can actually use smaller bits of fabric. So like I use a lot of remnants and I use a lot of different pieces to make doll clothing out of. I don't typically make a whole lot of doll clothing, but I figured that this would be something easy to start with. There's another really interesting fact. You see this arrow right here. This is the arrow. They're telling you what direction you should lay your fabric and your pattern down. This is going to be up and down. So if your pattern has an actual pattern that goes up and down, you're going to want to lay that up and down, okay? Again, remember to keep an eye on how many pieces you need to cut. This one says cut 4. Then you go up here, again, you're going to see, hey Butters, you're going to see that you need to lay this one on a fold, but you also need to cut 2. All right, so you're gonna actually get a 4 face of the fabric, but it's gonna end up being 2 pieces. Okay, so now I'm going to spread out the fabric, and I'm gonna show you exactly what I'm talking about. So it took me a little while to decide which fabrics I actually wanted to use. And I'm going to kind of explain this as simple as I can. We were talking about the direction of the fabric. And let's say you have a piece that is kind of small, okay? Because we're doing a doll dress. We want it to be kind of small. And a lot of times if you sew, you're going to find that you're going to collect a lot of different fabrics. And I thought this was a cute little piece. I don't know if we'll use it or not. But so you're trying to figure out what is the direction of the fabric. What you want to do is you want to look for, if you look right here along the edge, there is a little bit of what you may call stippling. I don't know if that's the right word, but there we go. There's a little bit of dots. Can you see the dots? Okay. That's telling you up and down. So that is your, what I like to call your north and south line. Now, understand something. I was not formally trained as a seamstress, so there's going to be some terminology that might not be right, but that's okay. So this is what I call your north-south line. So if my arrow is going up and down, that's exactly the direction I'm looking for. Okay, so that's just kind of a helpful hint. So now, like I said before, a lot of times it's easier just to cut fabric in small pieces. And it's okay to actually have your pattern overlap a couple of times because you're going to cut that off anyway. It's just excess. So now I'm going to go through and actually cut all the pieces out, and I'll show you what they look like. When I go through and I cut, you see the triangle right here. What I was first taught was to cut into the fabric, but I actually like making it so that the triangles go up instead of inward, because if you're a little bit new at sewing, it's probably better to have more fabric than not enough, especially when you're making doll dresses. A lot of times I've heard from different people that when they're making the so-called American Girl patterns, that if they don't make it specifically from the American Girl design, like from Simplicity or stuff you get online, that they have a hard time getting the doll's arm through the hole because of the way the hands are shaped on the dolls. So what I really recommend is have a little bit more, because you can always tailor it later if you have to. Besides, you're gonna find that if this is one of your first things that you've ever done, there's gonna be times where the sewing machine might not get the stitches right if you don't pin the pattern right. And so it's just easier to have a little bit more fabric. That way, if you make a mistake, it's not that big of a deal, okay? So now I'm gonna cut these out.